What's up? Welcome here to Lacrosse Now. I'm Travis Eldridge. He is Tom Eschen. Back to recap the weekend in college lacrosse. We've got an interesting exercise to do for the men's side. We'll get to that in a second. Also, some terrific guests coming up. Army's Brendan Nichtern and JMU's Dougherty.
And the biggest surprises from the women's weekend. And we did have some games that it's really stuck out once again. So some results that you look at here, like, really. So we'll also talk about those here. A Tuesday edition of Lacrosse Now, bringing down another fun weekend in which we saw some teams dominate. Maryland continue. I mean, that game against Penn State, like we talked about it on Thursday. Going into that game, you're like, yeah, maybe, you never know. Penn State kind of feisty at home, whiteout, and it was quickly defined that Maryland is still very, very good.
I missed the first quarter, and I turned it on, and I went.
It was over, yeah.
And I'm looking at it, and like the stands were like empty, and I was like, whoa. So that's what this game is. It felt completely different than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I was trying to watch that and the World Cup qualifier for Team USA at the same time, and they both sort of escalated the same. It was tough to, like, I missed goals on both ends because it was wild.
Yeah, the NCAA tournament, League 8 games were finishing. Carolina was cruising by that point on Sunday. But, yeah, so it was quite the sports weekend. Anyway, let's go. So this is what we're going to do on the men's side because Inside Lacrosse coming out here on Wednesday. So depending on when you're watching or listening to this, these may be out or about to come out. They will be publishing their men's midseason All-Americans, first 3 teams. So every media poll voter who votes in the media poll also is voting for the midseason All-Americans. So I figured I'd go through my first team
Travis
that I'm voting.
Has a vote in this. Yeah.
I have a vote in it, and we'll go back and forth. I haven't, by the time we're doing this, I haven't submitted the vote yet. I still have time.
Ooh, you can
so
be
if you
swayed.
convince me, I can go otherwise.
I'll do my best.
All right. So let's start at the attack spot. The attack spot is pretty loaded, though. From my preseason to where we are now, it feels, especially when you go through all 3 teams, it feels very different. In my first team, I've got Chris Gray, Connor Schellenberger, and Logan Wisnauskas. Now, the one that sticks out to me is Wisnauskas in terms of his point production because he's not one of the top handful of guys in the country in terms of point per game. But my feeling was his spot on that Maryland offense being the leader, it felt like he needed to be in the first team attack spot.
Yeah, I think those are the 3, to me, cut and dry. Those make the most sense. I think that there are some others. Asher Nolting, I think, is 4th in the nation right now in points per game. High Point, obviously, is sneaky, around, but they're not a top-tier team. But the other guy is Brendan Nichtern, and we're going to have on today. He leads the nation in points per game, which is great in the Patriot League and the way that Army's played pretty well now the last couple weeks, or at least the last weekend in that win over Loyola, and he's been a huge part of that. Maybe he's the only one with an argument here. I just can't replace anybody right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can't replace Chris Gray. And I know North Carolina doesn't have the offense they did last year, but he's playing every well as he has in the past. And Connor Schellenberger for Virginia, I can't take him out either. So if anybody I want to put in is Nichtern, I just can't take anybody out. And Wisnauskas, I appreciate your reasoning behind that because he's not a top 10 point getter, I don't think. In the country.
He's right there on the edge. He's still averaging 5.6 points per game. So he's less than a point difference from Gray and Schellenberger, who are 2 of the top 3, and about a point off of what Nichtern is doing. Honestly, Nichtern and Jack Myers, to me, from Ohio State, was the other guy that, at least when I went into this, with what Myers has done in some big games this year, is a guy that it's like, oh, maybe he finds a way, but then you go through it and you're like, there's no way. So both of those, Myers, Nichtern, and Nolting, are all 3 on my second team All-American.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's move on. We got more to talk about here.
Okay, let's get to the midfield.
We're pretty on agreement on that.
Yeah, I'm waiting for what Tom is going to have an issue with. Let's get to the midfield. I got Sam Hanley from Penn, Jack Hanna from Denver, and Tucker Dordevic from Syracuse.
Yeah, I like Hanley there. I think that for a Penn team that has exploded on offense at times this year, and Hanley coming back into the fold, he's been really good. And Tucker Dordevic as well for Syracuse, for a team that struggled a bit when they're winning. He is the one that is producing for them, and he's put up big 31 goals, 11 assists this year. That was a little more than I thought when I was looking through his stats.
Well, yeah, Dordevic, obviously the one that steals the show is the goal that he just scored against Duke. I mean, that goal, if Syracuse finds a way to make the tournament this year, I'm going to look to that goal in that game. A 1-goal game. They go transition, causing the turnover against Brendan Nichtern, go coast to coast, and he goes one-handed through the legs. It just felt like that goal, if Syracuse turns it around, that goal's the turning point. He's third in the nation in goals per game.
And we've been talking about him for a long time, it feels like, because he came on the scene, was a freshman, I think, a few years ago?
Yeah,
and then he had high expectations for the next season. He got hurt.
Yeah.
And then the year after that was COVID. So we've been waiting for this from Tucker Dougherty for a long time, and now looks like he's given the freedom to be himself a little bit more. He is healthy, and we talked about it, and I was a little coy. I didn't predict the win, but I said it feels like a game Syracuse is going to win, wasn't it? And they ended up winning.
You were right.
I wish I predicted it, but I can't take credit for that. The person I don't think – I mean, Jack Hanna's come on as of late.
Yes.
I just think he started the season too slowly. I would replace Jonathan Donville with Jack Hanna there. I know Donville's numbers aren't the same as Hanna's, but Donville, I think you've got a lot of Maryland players on here, but I would add Donville to that too. I would put him on this list. I think he's a first-team All-American right now, and what he's meant to that offense and going hand-in-hand with Wisnauskas there.
Yeah, so that's the tough thing that it comes down to when you look at how good Maryland has been.
Yeah, but it's not their fault.
No, I know it's not their fault. You're right. But, like, the numbers don't jump out quite the same. I mean, you have that offense when you look at it. I mean, when I look back to the preseason, Kyle Long from Maryland, the midfielder, was, I believe, either on my first or second team. And he's a guy whose numbers haven't been great, but like it's not. Maryland doesn't need them to be great.
No,
he just needs to be good.
Right. No one has to be otherworldly like Bernhardt was. Right. We talked about that in our last show. I think you brought that up for sure. And yeah, I think Donville's been really. You watch him play, and he sticks out. And I know Jack Hanna's come on for Denver as of late, but you know they drop a game here and there, and they just haven't been able to put up the numbers as Maryland as a team has. I just think Donville stuck out a little bit more to me.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. The edge I gave to Hanna is that it feels like he's leading that Denver team now. Like in the very much like how Sam Hanley in the midfield and Tucker Dougherty in the midfield for Syracuse are the guys that these teams are looking to.
They have to be good.
Right, they have to be good.
Or else they don't win.
The other guy who's really come on strong, who's on my second team, along with Donville, is Matt Campbell from Villanova, a guy who went off against Delaware this past weekend. I thought was a pretty good win for the Wildcats, who, with all that Villanova lost, like in Keegan Kahn and Owen Probilski both going to Maryland, I mean, for all that they lost, they're hanging right in there. They're, at the moment, a top 20 team, and look, it's going to take a big effort from a guy like Campbell, but it feels like they very much can contend with Denver and maybe on the right day contend with Georgetown in the Big East.
Yeah, I think that you're right. And maybe at the end of the year, we'll see a little more of that. I think Villanova will be battle-tested, and they do play they play some tough teams every year, and they could make some noise. It's just tough in that conference
You're going to have to win the Big East.
You got to surprise some people, especially at the end of the year. And Georgetown, as we know, is really good.
Very, very good.
Denver, you never know. Denver, I mean, the way the Big East has gone the last couple of years, I think, isn't Denver led at the end and got that top seed in the tournament, and Georgetown comes through. Yeah. So maybe it could be the opposite this year. Georgetown, runs the regular season. Denver comes through and wins the tournament. Who knows?
Denver would certainly like to flip the script on one.
Because Villanova could be
on the wrong side for a while.
Villanova could pull off a Marquette, from a few years back.
Yeah, 100%. And look, with how the conference is shaking out, it feels like Villanova is going to be there in the tournament. Yeah. So if you're in the tournament, that's all you ask for. You win 2 games in the course of 3 days, you're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Go defense.
We're going to go defense. Defense for me is hard with the close defense. Just figuring, because some of it's name recognition, and some of it is trying to figure out, okay, is the number one defender for all these guys? This was a discussion that some of the guys from Inside Lacrosse were having on Twitter earlier today. Is the number one defender from every one of these teams getting the number one cover for opposing teams?
And how much of it is schematic compared to actual individual
team
greatness?
Defense, all that. So I went Brett Makar from Maryland, Will Bowen from Georgetown, and Gavin Adler, who has really, I think, is getting the recognition he deserves from Cornell as my first teamers.
Yeah, I like that you have an Ivy League guy in there, because I do think as you look over this list, there needs to be more Ivy League. And I think that might be a trend as we get farther on into this list. But I think Cornell, is a team that has shown that they are strong on the defensive side of the ball, and that's been really important for them. I mean, you can't fault Georgetown's defense. I know you got their goalie in there too, but Bowen has been a huge part of that. And McElroy's had to make a lot of saves, but also they've had a good. They've done a good job of holding a lot of good teams.
Yeah.
With all that, I mean, we talked about Brett Dobson for Bonaventure today.
Yes.
And he leads the nation in goals against average. I believe that's
he's like top 5 in goals against average, save percentage.
McElroy's number 1. Yeah. Dobson but you look at what Georgetown has done defensively compared to the schedule that Dobson has faced. Nothing against Dobson. He only has to play who he has to play against. But Georgetown's doing this defensively against one of the hardest schedules in the country.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
Level.
And they deserve to have not only a goalie, but also to have Bowen on there after his transfer.
Yeah. All right. So
good call there in Maycar, Maryland. I mean, if you have more Ivy and plenty of Maryland, I have no problem with this. It's Ivy League in Maryland.
It's kind of the theme of this year. I mean, what are there, 5 Ivy League teams now in the top 10 in the country?
I think that's correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
that's absurd.
Of, Dartmouth is on the outside looking in, I believe.
Unbelievable.
They have a good team too.
Yeah, they've shown that they had a lead at Ohio State. Yeah, Brown's outside. All right, let's go short stick D midi. One of the changes inside lacrosse made this year in the media poll voting is 2 short stick D midis per each one of these teams. So you got to go deep in your short stick D midi knowledge. I went with Roman Pugliese from Maryland, who I like, and Peyton Razonka from Loyola. Now, Peyton Razonka is a guy who was on my radar entering this year, a guy who I've actually had a chance to do a handful of Loyola games over the last couple of years. He's been solid. His numbers in terms of caused turnovers this year, through the roof. He's got 20 caused turnovers this season as a short stick D midi to go along with 21 ground balls.
Yeah, he's popped off the page statistically and on the field too. He's got that sort of Craig Chick-like feel. Remember when Chick?
Yeah, with the short stick though.
With the short stick. Yeah, true. In terms of being able to cause a lot of turnovers up and down the field. I like him too, and he's been impressive for a Loyola team that seems to be coming on enough here. And then they lost the Army last weekend, but they can tell that they're starting to play better. And some of those things for them is that experience and being able to say they've got experience at almost every position. And if you can fill some of those holes, that helps you later on in the season. And no matter how long it takes Loyola to figure it out, they feel like they're going to be there at the end because of guys like that in spots like that.
Yeah, I mean, Loyola at this point, especially with what the Patriots League is like, it feels like Loyola, and honestly, it kind of same applies for Lehigh and BU. You just got to get in the Final Four of the tournament. Yeah. Make the semifinals, and you give yourself a chance, and you let your veterans go get it. Because at this point, maybe it's a 2-bid league, but it feels like maybe it's a 1-bid league with how they're going to beat each other up here throughout the regular season. So it's going to be a very, very a lot of it, I think, is going to come down to the very end.
Yeah, I think the Ivy League now, them being back in the fold, and I think Lax Reference talked about this over the weekend in terms of the conference schedule and strength, and when you have the teams beating each other up, and that's happening in the Ivy now, sort of akin to what the ACC normally is, but this year it's the Ivy. So whatever happens, like the Ivy League almost can't hurt themselves by beating each other up because they only help themselves by getting those RPIs up, the strength of schedule, because of what they did out of conference play. The ACC, for example, this year didn't do that. So when they beat each other up, when Syracuse goes and beats Duke, that's not the same kind of win it was a year ago. It's a whole different ballgame now. And now with the Ivy League, you got Yale with an upset win over Princeton. And you've got these other things that happen. They're like, oh, well, that's good for the league. It's such a it's a weird world. And I think the Patriot League has a similar feel to the ACC in that aspect.
It goes from the difference of, that's just a really competitive game, good for building each other up, to, oh, no, that was an elimination game.
Yeah.
And that's what some of these games in the ACC and the Patriot League will start to feel like. ACC more so than anybody else because they don't have a tournament and an AQ.
They don't get to automatically get somebody in.
Right.
All right. Yeah,
exactly.
those look good to me, too.
All right.
Let's roll with that. Yeah.
Let's go LSM. I went Rutgers Ethan Rawl.
Travis loves Rutgers.
I do not. I'm sorry. That is incorrect.
Where are they in your poll this week?
They are in the top 5.
Okay.
Just like they are in the regular media.
Who are the 2 teams
voters
behind them in the poll?
What, some Ivy League
in your
teams?
poll? Yeah, you got Penn and Princeton, I believe, right behind.
Yeah, they just came off losses.
Okay,
this week.
All right. So give us your explanation for Rawl. Didn't mean to interrupt.
First of all, Rutgers came off I had my skepticism about Rutgers, especially after they lost to Princeton. I kind of felt like, okay, this is who they are. Maybe they're good, not quite great. I then had a chance to watch them, and look, Hofstra is not what they were last year with Ryan Tierney and company, but they dismantled Hofstra in the game that we did on LSN. It was never even close, and the depth that they had scoring-wise, and they were playing against a defense that was top 10 in the country, and they made them look like it was a high school team. And so that gave me a little bit more confidence in Rutgers. And then I watched what they did against Ohio State, and I think one of the big takeaways for me for Rutgers against Ohio State is what they did defensively against Jack Myers, because Jack Myers has made a lot of other teams look really bad defensively, and they shut him down. I think he just had a couple of assists this weekend, which has seemed to be the key to slowing down Ohio State. You slow down Jack Myers, chances are you're going to win the game. They made sure to do that, and that will be something to watch moving forward. So that made me feel better about Rutgers, and you had a couple other teams coming off of losses. Anyway.
Go on. Are you
I was going to move on to Ethan Rawl.
Okay, yes, okay. I didn't know what you were getting to next.
Anyway, Ethan Rawl has 23 caused turnovers, 4 assists, and 31 ground balls playing on face-off wings and going in transition. I think he's done a little bit of everything. I believe I had him second or third team in my preseason. The other 2 guys I had here in contention for this spot, Ryan McNulty and Tyler Carpenter. McNulty from Loyola, Carpenter having a great season at Duke, despite Duke having some struggles.
Okay.
Yeah, what do you have a problem with?
I just think that there needs to be another Ivy League guy on here.
Who are you going to put on there?
I've got Joseph Bartolotto, the third, 14 ground balls, 12 caused turnovers for Cornell. Good defense.
Okay.
Andrew Song, we had on here from Princeton.
Yep,
Played
like
really well
Song.
for them this year. BJ Farrar from Penn.
He's another
good player. Like all those guys, I just think because of the strength that we've seen in the Ivy League this year, that the numbers notwithstanding, you should put one of those on the first team. Just because of what we've talked about with the Ivy League being the best conference. Not a lot of Ivy League guys on here. You got Gavin Adler, you got Sam Hanley. After that, you got to put another guy.
Well, there's 3 teams. I do have Ivy League guys on other teams.
Yes, I understand. But if you're talking about the best conference in the country, you'd imagine they have the best players in the country at those positions too.
Yes, but some of it also falls onto like the collective versus the individual. Like the All-American list isn't collective.
That's why
it's an individual honor for each one of these individual guys.
And some of these individual guys are while they do play within a scheme, are as good as the top tier other guys and other facets of life.
Well, and here was part of the problem I had. Like Princeton. Chris Brown and Alex Slusher are both having very good years.
Yeah.
Neither one of them is having an elite first-team All-American year, or quite frankly, an All-American attackman year.
No, I agree. I think you're right about the Ivy League as a whole. I think a lot of these teams are just really good groups. And they don't have, and I was going through, they don't have a top 15 statistically face-off man or goalie. Anybody in the Ivy League, which is crazy to think about when you talk about the strength of this conference. But I do think within these teams there are some good individuals, and maybe not in those specific positions. But if you have to give someone the benefit of the doubt, I feel like we should be giving that to the Ivy League, considering the strength of the conference this year.
Yeah, I guess. Some of it, though, like you gotta work your way into being a known. Like you can't have a guy who nobody's heard of be a first-team All-American.
I mean, Ethan Rawl. I mean.
Well, if you're a fan of college lacrosse, you should know who Ethan Rawl is.
I think that more people will know who BJ Farrar is compared to Ethan Rawl now that Penn's back and playing again.
Yeah,
I think BJ Farrar had more people that knew his name going into this year. I would put an Ivy League guy in because I think that
as your first team over both McNulty and Carpenter too.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I would definitely do that.
All right.
For sure. Just. I want to give that league deserves its due, and
I'm not saying
they're made up of the collective, but there's got to be some individuals there who are making plays just as much as somebody else. So if you're looking at an even slate where a lot of the stuff looks the same, then the Ivy League's got 6 teams in the top 10. I'm taking them every time. Because they're the teams that have been winning these games.
Well, that's where they're
winning these matchups.
Well, that's where they're getting their due. The fact that we've got 5 Ivy League teams in the top 10.
We have to pick and choose.
Because you look at Harvard, because that's another team that I've really liked watching so far this year. Like I don't see a first-team All-American on that roster yet.
I mean,
maybe by the end of the year you find somebody who's there, but it just doesn't feel like he's there yet. They've just been a great team.
And it feels like now that we're talking about this league as a whole, that's a lot of that because they haven't played for a year and a half. There hasn't been an opportunity for these guys
that's true. That's
to be seen on a big scale in a big game where they stick out and they talk about them, and they're open or whatever it is in the game. There's a feature on them. We haven't been able to do that, so we're just seeing these teams more as a collective as a whole going out and beating some good clubs. And you're like, oh, Harvard looks like a pretty good team top to bottom. but it's hard to find guys that stick out until you get to those moments later in the season in which they're making the play, or you're just seeing them more often.
Yeah,
where I think that's the case.
And they're also, I mean,
and this is a mid-season list, and
right.
And then
there are also less
there
guys that have stood out, like have put up crazy numbers.
Yeah,
right away.
the numbers too.
That's another way you can do it. Okay. Finally,
and you won't argue here because, like I said, I looked up the face-off and goalies, and I'm like, no one's even within striking distance. It's crazy.
Yeah. So Georgetown, interestingly enough, Owen McElroy injured for their game this past weekend. He did not play. They still won. So maybe that reflects poorly on McElroy because they still won and didn't give up a lot of goals with the backup there in goal. But he, up to this point, it feels right for him to be in goal. And then Zach Cole from St. Joseph's, another guy, if you don't know, you should know. He leads the country. He's winning 76% of his draws.
Yeah.
That's
I don't care what your schedule is, who you play. That's good.
And St. Joseph's has played some decent teams this year. Like they played Delaware, they played Drexel, they played Penn State, they've played Towson. Like they've played schools that are competing against good competition. And
I don't know if those schools are the best face-off guys in the world, but
okay. Sorry.
Neither. But Cole has been ascending. I remember I did a game of his when he was a freshman, and Taylor Ray's like, watch this kid. Like he's coming in, he's taking this spot, and he's going to be someone that escalates as the years go on, and he's achieved that. And I think in this day and age of the face-off, so fascinating where you see these guys ascend to the top. And sometimes it's almost interchangeable the way they get rolling, and some of their matchups also constitute that too.
Well, and you know what surprised me is that after this weekend where Michael Sisselberger had to go up against James Riley from Georgetown, Luke Weirman from Maryland now has the second best winning percentage for faceoffs here in the country. I voted him my second team guy and Sisselberger on my third team, which going into the year felt surprising to me, but that's how things are shaking out at the moment.
Like Maryland has always been a big wing team too, you know.
That's true.
And we talked about that with Jerry Byrne a little bit, the way the stats are made. I mean, I think that was even off camera, and how they sort of do their own face-off stats.
As they should.
I thought that was really interesting. He's like, we sort of charted our own way, and you have to. I think we talked about this before, looking at the ground balls these face-off guys pick up, and I think that Cole is one of those ground ball leaders right now in the nation. So that's, to me, that's the dominant on face-off. And Justin Inacio, a guy that was over 70% for most of the year, we know that he works with his wings as well as anybody, and not to a fault, but that's just the way it works. But that's more of a team aspect. It's more of a face-off team feel there, which is interesting, the way you sort of judge the face-off guys.
It is hard enough to keep stats for especially Division I college lacrosse game and the pace in which it's played. It's difficult. However, I really do feel like if it's not a separate stat, it should just replace the face-offs as whoever gets the offensive possession. Because that, honestly, if I'm a coach, it's all that matters.
Yeah, at the end of the 10-second, whatever the clamp and whatever happens after that, if you got the ball in your end and you have it for a certain amount of time, then yeah. Yeah,
the Delaware Hopkins game we did a couple of weeks ago is the perfect example. The number, like the face-off numbers didn't tell the story because half the time when one team won it, it was the other team that ended up getting the offensive possession.
Goalie, really quick. I'm not going to argue with McElroy there, but Matt Garber from BU, 59% save percentage, 9.16 goals against average. He's been really good all year long, and I think that I'm not going to fault the BU defense around him, but I don't think he has the defense in front of him that McElroy does. The strength and the talent there. I think Garber's had to make some really good saves in big moments, and he's a very active goalie at that. He's fun to watch if you watch that Harvard game, and he was making saves all over. It was incredible. So I think that he is edged out a bit here, but if he can continue to put some good numbers up as the season goes on, he might have something to say. He could be a good second-team guy, in my estimation.
I like him. I also like Luke Milliken from Jacksonville, who I think because Jacksonville, they got through some of the big names on their schedule and got wins, he's kind of dropped off. But he has consistently been very, very good, and he came up with some big saves in big games for them in non-conference play.
Yeah, and those didn't hurt his stats too much.
No.
You know, sometimes if he gets back into the conference play, the stats can go back up, but he stayed pretty steady.
Yeah, and they've got a couple of huge games coming up with High Point and Richmond here approaching. So I guess we're going to learn. We're going to learn a lot about Jacksonville here in the next couple of weeks. Also, I got some love for your BU. I know you're a big Terriers guy. Vince D'Alto's on my third-team attack.
Attack, yeah, okay. They've been exciting. Timmy Lee's
yeah.
been good for them. Jake Cates.
We had Cates on a couple of weeks ago on the show. He was fun to talk to, and despite that loss to Harvard, they're going to be a team to watch in the Patriot League the rest of the way.
I hope so. They make it a little more interesting, I feel like, instead of the same Lehigh, Loyola, Army. They sort of mix things up a little bit, and maybe one of those teams drops a game and BU's there at the end. BU's
never made an NCAA tournament in their relatively short program history. Would be quite the feat to check one off, especially this year.
Yes, it would.
Anyway, speaking of All-Americans, Brendan Nichtern, whether he's first team, second, he's going to be in the mix. And earlier today, we had a chance to catch up with the Army attackman.
So Brendan Nichtern joins us now from Army, coming off a huge victory over Loyola. He also leads the nation in points per game. Brendan, talking about your team to start here, how big was that win? What did it mean to you guys to go out and beat Loyola last weekend?
Yeah, it was really huge win for us. Coach A talked about it all week. Is what separates a good team is also kind of a bounce back week, which is big for us. And we kind of looked to the senior group all week, and we just needed this for not even just the confidence, but as everyone knows, Patriot League play is tough, so we need this one just kind of moving forward to every weekend.
Oh, you mentioned the Patriot League, and you guys obviously know how good Lehigh is from the week prior. Loyola, yourselves, BU, you know that game against Navy is always a big one. I mean, when you look at this conference, Bucknell has had some nice wins early on. Like, you look at this thing, it has to feel wide open. Like, how have you guys felt like approaching the league play?
Yeah, I think something that we've learned always the 4 years of at least I've been here, my senior class is every week has got to be earned. There's no easy weeks. You can't just have an off game and still win. And that's kind of just respect to every team that we play. Every team's very well coached. They're going to give us their best game too, because they know how big of the game against us is. So we definitely take pride in that. And every week's the same way. We just got to get better each game. And every game is also very important. There's no easy wins. Every win's the same for us. So just put in the column and then we move on to the next one.
Was any of last year on your minds as you played Loyola? They ended your season when you went into this weekend?
Yeah, there's always a little bit more, especially because how that ended for us last year. But I think the majority of it just all 4 years has been kind of a rivalry game, but also just how important it is for the league. So I think kind of just how important it was for this year was kind of what triumphed over everything.
You stepped right onto campus there at West Point, and you were an immediate contributor. You had 80 points that freshman year. So you've been a goal scorer since the very beginning, but was there a moment where it felt like it clicked? Was it right away early on, or have you kind of felt like your game has progressed to the point where you've got now where you're one of the nation's top scorers?
Yeah, I wouldn't say kind of right when I got into the practice, I was the same player. It definitely took some time, but coming out of Long Island, I think the speed of the game was fairly fast, but, Long Island lacrosse, obviously, is top notch, probably the best. But some work with Coach Ward has been awesome. I think 3 to 4 years he kind of sees the same player that he was. That's been huge for me. It's just I love going and kind of working film with him. So I think over the 4 years, I've become a completely different player, but every year has been in a different role. Whether that's kind of adding on to my dodging at the 5x5 or being more mature with the ball and less turnovers. So I think I had an impact, but just in a very different way early on.
Well, and following up on that, like how big was the year at Army Prep to feel like you were ready to roll as soon as you stepped there on campus at West Point?
Yeah, my year at the prep school was fantastic because, most of the guys that are playing for us now, Lehman, Wygand, all 4 of not all 4, 3 of our D-middies went to the prep school. So every single day was awesome. I got to go against some of the top defensemen in the country every day, putting in different moves that I wasn't able to do in high school, working on my left hand every day on the wall. I shot with Gunnar Phillip maybe every single day, and him and Hunter Major worked out for like 3 hours. So I tagged along with them. So all that kind of added up to allow me to kind of keep pace with the speed of college lacrosse right away.
Now that you're in college lacrosse, who are the toughest defensemen you've gone up at this level against?
Yeah, I think every defenseman's it's definitely very different with how I kind of approach the game. I know 2 guys in the Patriot League is the Cam Wires, the one guy I just played. He's spectacular. He makes me work. When I get to the 5x5, he makes it very difficult just because how fast he is and how strong he is. And then Teddy's another guy, Leggett from Lehigh. He's got some of the best sticks that I've ever played against. Now, he reminds me just like the same player Craig Chick was when he was there. It's another guy that you got to have two hands in your stick and protect it very well. But he's also an awesome guy. We have a good relationship there. But just two of those guys, I think, were some of the best.
You mentioned a couple of your rivals there in the Patriot League. You guys have obviously had a couple of big wins over Syracuse in your time there. Do you have a favorite win or a favorite game of your time at Army so far?
Yeah, I guess the generic answer would be the Patriot League championship my freshman year. That was pretty awesome against, especially the Loyola one was pretty awesome because I think a lot of people kind of count us as out there. But the Lehigh was awesome just because we came back behind 3. So I think that kind of meant just to see the senior group win there and now just being in those shoes now, which is how much it meant to them. You just saw it on their faces. So I would say definitely that one. Then I'll see another easy one to say is the Army-Navy game with Matt Manal's overtime goal is pretty awesome. That was the first time I played in a crowd that big. And I'm usually not a nervous player. I don't think I've ever been nervous for a game, but that one, it definitely hit me a little bit.
That hits you like emotionally? Like, does that really come through, I'd imagine? Like, gives you goosebumps in some of those moments?
Yeah, that game kind of just sticks out from the rest, especially because the week building up is the alumni texting you. They stay with you the whole season. That just means something more. And I think also something that's really important too is winning for the senior class too. Is if you don't go well in the Patriot League tournament and all else fails, kind of, you could say, is that game kind of something you could hold on to for the rest of your life, and that's something you could talk about. So it just means something more in that game.
Yeah, we talked about your adjustment to the college game. I guess off the field, in terms of the regimented schedule that you have at Army, what's that been like in terms of your initial adjustment? And now that you're a senior, is it like old hat by now? Is it just like part of your daily life?
Yeah, it's definitely tough a little bit getting into your scheme of things, especially being an athlete. So you got class all day, obviously, and you don't get and especially as a freshman, sophomore, you don't really have as much off periods as I do now. So sometimes I'm done after lunch, or I'll have one period that ends at 2:00. And but at freshman year, you got class till 3:00. You run up to practice, and then you got tons of homework. But you have to kind of get used to putting in a little extra time right after practice. I think it's pretty tough earlier on. Is if you have a really tough practice, you kind of just want to go into the locker room, hang out a little bit before you have to go down and do homework. But I got into good rhythm of putting in a little bit extra wall ball every day, and my whole team's awesome about doing that. They're very dedicated to that, and they've always put the time aside.
It's an impressive feat to be a captain of any Division I lacrosse team in the country, but to be a captain at the at Army feels like it's just like a step above. What kind of pressure or onus do you put on yourself knowing you're a captain of a team there at West Point?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's any pressure, only because like you say, being a captain of Army, everyone on our team is seriously a leader. And one thing that's awesome about my senior class is everyone's found their role and they do it very well. So how we like to think of it is that we kind of just pass the information. We'll have to be the bad guys occasionally. We have to yell at just things that are going wrong. But we have so many guys that I can name. It goes beyond the senior class too. We have guys that, haven't been fortunate enough to play yet on the weekends, and they're some of the best leaders in the locker room. They're very respected. Like one guy is like Quinn Binney. He's one of the top leaders on our team. And so it just makes my job very easy because we have so many guys in the locker room that are very well respected and in all different areas.
The title for you, but that obviously is something. What else comes attached to that, I guess? Is there off the field stuff, or is it just really just because of what you've done here that sort of lends itself to having that title? Yeah, so there's a little more off field stuff when it comes to being a captain. Some duties that come with it is occasionally have some more meetings within like West Point. They like to have a bunch of captains meetings to kind of everyone on the same page. But yeah, I don't think anything really changes. Like I said before, is just you pass the information down to the rest of the team. And I think that's a sign of our culture and a sign of Army Lacrosse is how easy my job is, because seriously, I have so many great leaders outside of just 3 captains on the team. So I like to think my job's pretty easy.
What was it originally that drew you to wanting to go to a military academy?
Yeah, so I had 2 cousins that grew up in Massapequa as well that actually went here. Matt and Nick Isnardi. And kind of just growing up, I remember just I always went to whether football games or lacrosse games. And kind of when I got mature enough, I remember my cousin Matt kind of just telling me about, there's something different about the guys in the locker room. And I think that's kind of like everyone says that, but I was fortunate enough to meet some of his friends, and I could just tell initially there's just that different bond. And when I went on one visit, and I just told my parents, Coach A offered me, and I said in the car ride, he's like, yeah, it takes a couple days to think about it. And I just said within a minute in the car, I said, nope, I want to go here. I know this is for me. Because I just kind of drifted toward these type of people. We all have the same mindset when it comes to lacrosse and outside of lacrosse.
I can imagine your experience in talking maybe with some of the guys you played with in high school compared to what their experience might be in college is a lot different. Like those conversations in terms of what they experience and their institution compared to you.
Yeah, I think just the biggest thing, like I stated before, is just kind of the rush of getting at the practice. I think most other college guys, sometimes you could kind of roll out of bed. You have a couple hours for practice, but with us, you have to have a very good mindset every day, because it's pretty tough going from class all day and getting right off the bus, changing. And some guys only have about 10 minutes to stretch, and then maybe you do a couple things on the wall, and then you're off to practice. And then right after that, you're going right back down. So I just think the aspect of being very good with your schedule, both academically and then also kind of the lacrosse aspect, is what takes us to another level.
I'd imagine you have to do some sort of physical fitness test or whatever, alongside of lacrosse too. I mean, is there an aspect of that? And if so, like what was the hardest part of that for you?
Yeah, so there's a couple classes you take every year. It's, as you could say, it's like the PE classes of high school, but they're all different. One of them's combatives, one of them's survival swim, and there's functional fitness, boxing. But and then every semester you take one, I guess two. One's just the standard test. It's actually changed a couple of things, but I think lacrosse, especially how we work out for lacrosse, it translates very well. So it's mostly body, push-ups. Part of the test is like a sled carry, the run. So I think we do very well with that. So the translation is very, very good.
Off the field, like what kind of courses are you taking right now as a senior at West Point?
Yeah, so kind of how West Point goes is your freshman and sophomore year, kind of just the basic generic classes, which was horrible for me. I'm not a math guy at all. I'm not much of a certain class, but as you move on later, you go into like your engineering track, which is the environmental track. And then I'm a law major here. So kind of each year you take like one or two each semester, and then senior year is kind of majority of your track, which has been awesome.
So you're mostly like law type classes at the moment?
Yeah, I think this semester especially, I'm just on all law classes.
What's been your favorite class so far?
I'd probably say last semester, national security law. I had one taught, Major Szymanski was my first time he came into West Point too, and he was just awesome. It's a lot easier when you have an awesome teacher teaching every day. And I had a lot of my classmates, most of my, I had like 4 guys in my senior class, and we had like 3 of those guys in that one class. So we were all sitting next to each other. It makes class a lot more fun.
All right, Brendan, we'll get you out of here on this. You ever been to the Army-Navy football game? Is that part of your schedule on a yearly basis?
Yeah, so actually everyone that goes to both schools has to go.
You have? Oh, I didn't realize. I didn't know if there was a conflict with fall ball or anything like that, but
no,
you have to go.
No, that weekend they set aside. So even at the prep school we went. So I've been 5 times, and every time it's awesome.
Nothing like it.
No.
Whether you're watching in person or at home, right?
No, for sure. And you got one more Army-Navy lacrosse game to get through. We can't wait for that. We can't wait to see what you do here the rest of the year. Good luck, Brendan. We appreciate the time.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Great talking to Brendan Nichtern. Cool to hear some of those stories from like behind the scenes at Army-Navy games. Just a completely, like we talked about, completely different sort of college life than a lot of these other kids have.
And you talk to him, and he talks about like leading a group of leaders, and that, I mean, it's exactly what you get at West Point. Very cool.
The dynamic I can imagine in that locker room is fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, different than almost any other you walk into.
Yeah, really glad we had him on. Appreciate them for working
Having
with us
a great year.
All right, let's go to the women's side of things. And we had some surprises. So we're picking our two best surprises per person here from the weekend. And, this stems off our quick picks a little bit that we make each week. Sometimes we don't revisit those for one reason or another. We're right half the time.
We've been right a lot.
Yeah, I know. Oh, thanks. Okay. All right, well, I don't know about that. Anyway.
I've been right a lot.
I thought Drexel was going to win this game, but Denver's defense, man, 10-4, Denver beating Drexel this weekend.
Yeah, this did not go the way you thought it would.
No, I mean, Denver, their defense is as advertised. They're the #1 defense in the country, and it showed up. They caused 23 turnovers against Drexel. Denver won 11-17 on the draw. And Drexel, I thought, they played some pretty tough teams this year, and, maybe on the come up a little bit. But with an offense that it's as good as Drexel's has, with Carson Harris, one of the best midfielders in the country, they just couldn't get anything going, and Denver really shut them down. So that, to me, was surprising that Drexel could only muster 4 goals against Denver. But Denver deserves all of the credit there. They played a really good game, a complete game, and I think that that's the most impressive thing. A lot of these teams all season long, they talk about playing a complete game. Denver did it on both sides of the ball. And they deserve the credit. Just a little surprising that they were that impressive against a team like Drexel.
It feels like Denver does this to other teams more than maybe anybody else. Like, I feel like they win a lot of 11-9, 10-8 type of games. Maybe more than some of the other top teams in the country.
I mean, you look at the game with Boston College. I know it was like 4 degrees, but, I mean, that was
negative.
It wasn't easy for Boston College in that game. A lot of times BC's looked like, even against North Carolina, you saw Charlotte North breaking through double teams on a women down situation and getting through and scoring 15, 16 goals. So Denver, they watch out, because they get in and they get a couple matchups in which they can hold these teams that have dynamic offenses to single-digit goals. They could be in line for maybe an upset or two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Down the road, and get themselves into a quarterfinal. And if things go right, you never know how far they could go.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to stay out west. A game that I had Stanford beating Colorado. Now, this isn't a huge surprise in terms of result. Colorado got the best of the Cardinals 17-16. The thing that surprised me is just kind of how this game played out. It was a 16-11 Colorado lead in the fourth. Stanford then scored 5 of the last 6 goals. So they had things going back in the right direction, kind of dug themselves in too deep of a hole. But if you were to tell me entering this game that Ashley Humphrey would have 6 points and Ali Bianco would score 5 goals, I would 100% tell you that Stanford would win the game.
Yeah.
But they didn't. So credit to Colorado. They still figured out a way, even with allowing Stanford's probably 2 best offensive players to go off. Galen Liu also had a nice game in a 17-16 loss. So to have all of those players contribute and still for the Buffaloes to win, I think said a lot about Colorado. And I think what this game taught me, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it, is that we are going to have a heck of a 3-way race down the stretch between Colorado, Stanford, and USC in the Pac-12.
Yeah, all those teams.
They're all beating each other.
They've all flashed brilliance, right, at one time or another over the course of this year. And Stanford, you feel like, is so close to being there and getting there. And some of the experience of these other teams will come into play, especially the second time through. Second time around they play these teams, and that's a different dynamic with the Pac-12 in which you see that sort of come into play a lot more.
Yeah, you had the epic game and the great game in overtime between Stanford and USC the week before. I thought that was maybe Stanford's like, all right, this is us. We're back. And then Colorado knocks them off. So it's going to be a fun finish to the Pac-12. And what a Pac-12 tournament we could be in store for.
Yeah, it's fun out west. All right, next up for me, my surprise, this was interesting. Virginia beat Louisville 12-11. And maybe this shouldn't be such a surprise. I think maybe Louisville is a little better than we thought. And Virginia just seems to keep playing these close games.
Every week.
They don't win them. They haven't won a lot of them. They've played some tough teams. They didn't win a lot of them, but they were close. And yet they have another close game to Louisville. It's more of a play-to-your competition type deal. But Louisville, and look at these categories. Ground ball, 17-8. Shots, 23-15. If Ashley Vernon doesn't make 12 saves for Virginia, this is a very different story. This is a huge win for Louisville. So Virginia, I don't really know what going on. I guess I feel like they should be better than their record of 6-6, and Louisville coming up and being really competitive with them now at 5-6 surprised me a little bit. And I don't know if I should have been surprised, but it just feel like Virginia coming off the loss to James Madison would have been a little bit hungrier maybe to come out and get a win and do it in more of a convincing fashion. A win's a win, but a little surprising that it had to be that close for them to do it.
Credit to Scott Teeter's Cardinals team. I mean, you got a gauntlet of a schedule when you play in the ACC.
It's true.
Competing.
And if you can compete like that in the ACC, I think you're doing okay. And that's what, I mean, Pittsburgh also, to their credit, their first year. I mean, they scored
12 goals against BC this week.
That was an honorable mention for me.
Yes.
The 12 goals that you saw Pitt score against Boston College. And no fault to Pitt, but I just feel like Boston College should be blowing people out. I don't know.
Look at what Pitt did against Duke.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean,
Panthers are coming to play.
They're fun. Pitt's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
For a team, it's almost like an expansion team. They got nothing to lose. They got a lot of new players. They got a mix of transfers with some recruits and some club players. What an interesting mix, and they've done a really good job of creating a buzz in their first season.
All right, let's go to the surprise of the weekend. Men's, women's, whatever.
I texted you about this.
Yeah. James Madison going to College Park and knocking off the undefeated Terps.
Yeah.
Did you pick I didn't pick this game. Did you pick this game?
We didn't have this game.
We didn't even have this game in quick picks.
We did not have this game on our list.
Sorry, that's how little that we figured that this game was going to be like this. But James Madison goes on the road, wins 13-8. The thing because James Madison jumped out to an early lead in the first half, and that was key. However, the thing that impressed me the most about this game is that after James Madison took the lead, Maryland came back to tie it at 6. And James Madison responded and went on to score, at that point, 7 of the next 9 goals to finish off the game. That, to me, says everything you need to know about this James Madison team in terms of not being intimidated, not being phased, just going out there and knowing backs against the wall, we need to find a way to win, because this game made James Madison's season. They can't get the AQ in the CAA because they're ineligible for the tournament. This win, as long as they don't screw things up when they're in conference play, this win puts them in the NCAAs, meaning they're going to play in the postseason.
They were the team I had to stock up on, remember, last week, and after their win over Virginia. And I was like, well, that's 3 top 25 wins. And like at that point, you're looking at the schedule, like, okay, that should be good enough to get in. Don't count out a desperate team. I mean, a desperate team, be afraid. And they got the job done. And they knew that this was their tournament. This was their season on the line, knowing they don't get that AQ no matter what. And from what I understand, Maryland was not pleased with their performance at all. And
held to 8 goals.
Credit to James Madison for playing really well, but Kathy Reese on the Maryland side, I was told gave it to him a bit after that game. And I think that maybe for Maryland, it could have been more of a wake-up call than anything else.
How about Isabella Peterson? The run she's on here in the last 3 games, these 3 big wins. They beat Richmond, Virginia, and now Maryland in 3 straight. Peterson with 5 goals and an assist against the Terps.
She's just like we talked about on the men's side of things. For that offense and them to be successful, she's got to go. She's got to be the person and the focal point, along with their goalie, Molly Dougherty.
First win since 2003.
Over Maryland
for James Madison.
Good for them. I mean, that's great. While. They'll play CAA teams now, I think, for the rest of the season for the most part. So the last really good RPI team on their schedule. And with the CAA, we talked about this on the men's side, CAA is a bit of a down year this year.
Yeah.
Some of these teams didn't get their non-conference wins, so that's going to clinch their spot, and good for James Madison. They should be in the tournament, and they've won the conference tournament 4 straight times. So, I mean, that would have most likely, if they kept that trend alive, propelled them into the NCAAs. Now they do it on their own.
Right. Well, speaking of the Dukes, had a chance to talk a lot about this game in James Madison's season so far with goalie Molly Dougherty earlier. She is terrific, so stay tuned. Listen to this. So coming off the big win over Maryland this weekend, we have James Madison goalie Molly Dougherty joining us now. Molly, that win, gigantic for you guys this year. Felt like a really big one for the program as well. How did it all go down for you guys in College Park on Saturday?
I think we just came in there and we knew that it was really important to start strong. Not a lot of teams against Maryland this year who were able to compete with them. came out of the gate, ready to work. And I think that we knew we had to attack it and we couldn't be afraid of the opponent. There's nothing scary in a competitive game. So just making sure that we came out there and set the tone early, and making sure that we just kind of stayed in our consistent ways throughout the game, like had to play a full 60 minutes.
How big was it just in terms of a program win, not only for just this year, but how big did it feel for you guys at James Madison as a whole?
Oh, absolutely massive. I think that it's something that we're all going to remember for the rest of our lives, right? The last time we beat them was 2003. And I was like in preschool or something like that, right? Like it's when you think about it, no one who's at the program currently has done it. So, and especially being able to do that on their senior day, at their home field, I think was something that we went in there and, took that to heart. And, UVA, we were their senior day as well. And we just came in there with the mentality of, all right, you want to make us our senior day, like your senior day, that's fine. We're here to compete.
I love that attitude. It's like, hey, why don't we come? We're here. You invited us to the party. We're going to crash it anyway.
Hey, if you're going to go to the party, might as well dance.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, you obviously the thing that's probably overhanging for you guys throughout the non-conference play is the fact that you can't play in the CAA tournament and you can't compete for the automatic qualifier. I wonder how much has that played into, especially this last stretch where it's like, hey, it's almost backs against the wall. We got to find a way to win some of these so we can make sure that we are playing in the postseason.
Right. I think that that's been a huge focus for us up until maybe this week, right? We start conference play this week. So, everyone kind of starts 0-0. But, those past 3 games of ranked opponents for us were must wins. I think we kind of came out of the gate as coaches and as players, as captains. We were like, you know what, we need to start winning. We need to start putting it together and understanding that if we don't, we're not going to necessarily love the result. But, at the same time, Shelly was talking to us about you don't want to get to a point where you're so focused on the outcome of May that you aren't enjoying what you're doing now, right? Because then what if you don't get the bid and you look back and you're like, did I even enjoy any of it? So I think it's kind of like that balance for us. But graduating seniors, there's maybe like five of us, 6 of us. We were meeting with the coaches and we kind of just understood, what we really wanted out of this year.
How do you look at conference play, knowing that you can't play in the tournament?
Just another game. I think it's also understanding that we have the ability to still win the regular season title. So making that our championship in and of itself, that's, going to be a statement. So I think that we come out there and we understand that, you guys are lucky that we're not in the tournament. Like, we'll just make it a little bit harder for you when you have to play us.
Your career has just been incredible to watch since your freshman year. You walk on campus and you end up winning a national championship as a starter, and then all the ups and downs throughout the course of 5 years. As you look back on that first year, obviously it's like the greatest moment in the world, but how hard is it to win a championship like that as a freshman, and then the whole rest of the time you're there, it's almost like you're chasing after something you've already accomplished?
Yeah, so I think that there's 2 things to that. The first thing is obviously I'm a super senior. I'm old. I'm 23. I have freshmen who are 18 who don't believe that I'm 23, and that's funny. But at the same time, I came here in my redshirt year, my true freshman year. I was injured. I had 2 hip surgeries coming in, and then I practiced with the team. We came back, fighting for that starting position. Coming back my second year was difficult. So my first freshman campaign, then winning that national championship, obviously one of the coolest things you'll ever do. And then kind of coming back and not having what our coaches kind of call that championship hangover. I think that was something our program struggled with, is we came in and we expected it to be a little bit easier maybe than we had remembered it being. It's like you always think it's a lot better than it was until you're actually in it and you realize it's a lot harder. And learning that people are out to, compete with us. We earned that respect and people are going to want to come after us. We have a target on our back and we have to respect that and respect every single opponent. It definitely has been an up and down. every year has been different, right? And then you get the curveball of COVID. But I think that our program, much like a lot of other programs in the country, struggled a lot with just trying to figure out who we were again, right? Like kind of standing on what our morals are, getting back to how the team was maybe when I was young. And the issue is that half the team, or more than half the team now, hasn't had a regular season, right? Because they've come out of COVID, they've haven't been in college. The older girls don't necessarily know the traditions before COVID. So there's a lot of things that might get lost in the shuffle. So paying attention to those details, I think, is something that we're now just getting back to doing, and that showed in our Maryland game.
Yeah, and back to this season, like what is the switch that kind of flipped for you a couple of games ago? Because I think it was that Rutgers game you guys lose at home, and then it was like all of a sudden something flipped, and you guys now all of a sudden are playing the lacrosse I think you probably expected to play at the beginning of the year.
Right. I think that goes back to the point of people just coming together and being like, we're tired of losing. Like it is what it is. We're tired of not competing. We know we're better. That's like the worst part, is the definition of insanity. It's like banging your head against the wall and knowing that you can be better. We know our potential, and it's frustrating when then you go out there and, you're not performing at the level that you can't. And being overlooked is something that we're used to, but not something that we always enjoy. So I think that we came off of that win really wanting it, and then understanding that we had a lot of work to do.
I believe it's your roommate, Isabella Peterson, right? Who she's been on a tear in the last 3 games. What's gotten into her?
She's actually my best friend. Like Taylor Marchetti is my other roommate too. The 3 of us are like peas in a pod. But I think, she's kind of gotten to the point where she understands that no one can really stop her. Like she's an absolute beast. It's like Taylor can run for 300 years and like not be tired. Like same with Lizzie Fox. Like I don't understand how they do it. Like I could never. But I think again, it just goes back to that willingness to compete, willingness to want to win, and willingness to just focus on us. We didn't go to Maryland focused on Maryland. And I think that that's something that maybe in past years we have gotten a little bit kind of caught up in, maybe the opponent, or maybe the lack, like thinking that there was going to be a lack of competition. And, it's sports, anything can happen. And you have to actually play the game to win. You can't just show up and expect for the result. No one's caught up in the result until everything's zeros.
I mean, 10 times if you're staring down a free position from Isabella, how many are you stopping?
Maybe 2. Like,
really?
Is she missing? How many times is she missing? Like, not often. And I think, we also have that competition, being friends and understanding. She knows exactly like how to push my buttons and like where I'm weak. So she'll try to put it there, and I'll try to get into her head of understanding where she's probably shooting. So we do something called an 8-meter challenge at practice, where the coaches will pick a shooter, put them on the 8-meter, and then, we'll have Rachel Mady on one side, Marae Durkin on the other, and it's just like absolute chaos trying to get the person to score. But that's that competitive nature. Now she's like got a ridiculous shooting percentage. Someone makes a save on her on game day, I'm like, good save. Like, I know how hard that is. That is like, God bless you.
Speaking of chaos, you're living with a 3-month-old puppy. That is something I don't think, I know you've been in college a couple extra years, but in college for me, I don't know, now having had a puppy, I don't know how you're handling that.
We have a puppy and we have a kitten. I have a cat. Isabella has a puppy. We joke about Taylor getting a fish or something. We're running our little petting zoo over here. I think it also kind of takes us out of maybe the super hard kind of competitive nature. You get to come home and like be a little bit more normal maybe. We're on a good schedule for puppies, right? We're up at 6 for lift. So like, it makes sense. Yeah, that's definitely been fun and interesting for sure. Lots of different adventures already.
You've been in Harrisonburg for a while now. What are you going to miss the most when you leave?
Oh, I don't necessarily think I'm going to, obviously like Centera Park, right? Like the view from there is so pretty. I think the biggest thing that I'm just going to miss is like the people here at JMU. That's a huge reason why I've come back, is the coaching staff and my teammates. And just like the willingness to be nice to people is something that a lot of people in Harrisburg actually have. It's called the Friendly City. Definitely a different vibe than where I'm from in Alexandria, Virginia. So I would say I think I'm going to miss a little bit more of like the slow pace kind of life. It's kind of like a quiet little town. And I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what I miss the most when I leave, I guess.
Yeah, it's the same state, but just a completely different deal out there. You get out in the mountains, in the Blue Ridge Mountains. There's so many good spots to adventure out there. It's a cool spot.
Absolutely.
Well, Molly, we appreciate the time. We can't wait to see what you guys do here down the stretch of the regular season and conference play. Good luck, and hopefully we catch up sometime here soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So I think the lesson I learned from Molly Dougherty is that if you're going to have a senior day, don't invite James Madison, because they've now beaten Virginia and Maryland in back-to-back senior day events. And so the Dukes took it personally.
It's so cool. I mean, she's had such a long career. I mean, she stepped on campus on 2017. She redshirted that year and wins a championship her next year. So she's been living this life for a long time. So to see it come to fruition like this and to hopefully finish out with at least an NCAA tournament bid once again, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not a normal college kid. I'm 23, living the life. They've got the petting zoo going on there at the house with her and Isabel Peterson. They got cats, dogs. Yeah, having fun there in Harrisburg.
Living the dream. I think she wants to be a coach when everything's said and done. So I don't think she'll be leaving anytime soon, the lacrosse world.
And I tell you what, I think she would make a terrific coach.
Yeah.
Great personality.
Good mind,
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. So would you like to mention the team that you've been in on?
Panther City Lacrosse Club's the hottest team on the planet right now, Travis. What, they've won 6 in a row? Something like that? They
could make the playoffs in the NLL.
It felt like no designs on being this good, and yet here they are. They've brought a group together that plays well together. No big names. They get rid of Ryan Banesh early on in the season, and look at them now. They've got a chance to make the playoffs in the NLL.
6 and 8. They're right there.
Tracy Koluski's done a great job with them, and they're fun, and they've been great to watch. Patrick Dodd's my guy.
Maybe the story of the season.
I mean, giving Jeff Teat a run for the Rookie of the Year. We didn't even think Teat would be in the same stratosphere, and he hasn't been for the most part. But Patrick Dodds has had a little bit of something to say about that.
I will say that it probably helps them that they're in the West.
It does.
The East is.
You can only play who's in front of you. That's it.
By the way, shout out to the Bandits, 12-1.
Yes, they're excellent.
They are very good.
Yeah, we were excited about that Halifax matchup, and that got less and less exciting as the day went on, as that game went on.
And Halifax getting rid of Kyle Jackson this week as well. He's now in Philadelphia. Had a big game for Philadelphia in his first week.
We talked about the acclamation of Sean. I know we're going off on an NLL tangent here, but the acclamation of Sean Evans. And
did it screw it up?
Maybe. And Kyle Jackson, a guy that was a part of that move to Halifax.
Yeah, he was like the guy.
They were putting him as the face of the franchise. He moved there. And then Philly got some, and Kyle Jackson went a goal and 4 assists.
And 5 points.
For the Wings.
Yeah.
Things are maybe changing, the chemistry of that Eastern Conference due to that.
Anyway, so there. Maybe we talk more NLL on Thursday?
We probably should.
Yeah, okay, because things are happening. We're coming down the stretch of the regular season.
Things are happening. It's happening, as Michael Scott would say.
It's happening!
In reference to last week's show. One more reference.
Anyway, we will see you back here on Thursday for Lacrosse Now. Thanks for listening and watching. He's Tom. I'm Travis. We'll see you.